Here's some quadratic equations for us to solve. So this first lot look pretty easy because they're plus plus. So hopefully by now you've got this down pat. When it ends in a plus, the two numbers have to add to be the middle term, so it must be 3 and 1, and they're both going to be the same, and they're both going to be plus, so x equals -1 and -3. Similarly here, it ends in a plus. We need the two numbers that multiply to be 12, but they have to add to be 7. So it's 4 and 3. Ending in a plus, they'll both be the same. And the first sign tells us they'll both be positive. So k is -4 and -3. And similarly here, we know that the two numbers have to add to be 10. So when we look at 16, our options are 4 and 4, so clearly not 4 and 4, 2 and 8. So 2 plus 8 equals 10. So they're our numbers, ends in a plus, both going to be the same, and the middle term is a plus, so they will both be positive. X equals -2 and -8. This next batch don't end in a plus, these first couple. So we know the two numbers we're looking for, the difference between them has to be 15. So it must be 16 and 1, and the first sign is a negative. It tells us the bigger number has to be negative. So x equals -1 and 16. With the next one, the two numbers the difference between them has to be 3. So it must be 4 and 1. Can't be 2 and 2. And the first sign is negative, so the bigger number has to be negative. And that tells us x is 4 and -1. All right, we need two numbers that multiply to be 15, and the difference between them has to be 2. So we know it's 5 and 3. So 5 and 3, and they end in a negative, so the two signs will be different. The first sign is a plus, so the bigger number will be a plus. So b is equal to -5 and 3. Now this last one, our x squared term is negative, and that makes it a bit harder to factorise. So it's much easier if I change the signs of every term on both sides of the equation. That is a much easier equation now for us to solve, because when we're factorising, if our leading term is negative, it just makes it that little bit harder. So now I'm good to go. It ends in a negative. I need two numbers where the difference between them is 4. So two numbers that multiply to be 12. Difference between them is 4. It's 6 and 2. The first sign is a negative, so the bigger number will be negative. So x must equal 6 and -2.